The war had been going on for 11 years, and Dara Osai had watched every single day of it from behind a sheet of reinforced glass. Not the fighting itself, the station's sensors pulled that in as cold data. Fleet positions, energy signatures, debris fields expanding slowly in the dark like bruises spreading across skin. She had learned to read a battle the way some people read weather patterns. She knew what a retreat looked like before the ships started moving. She knew what a massacre looked like before the casualty numbers came in. She filed the reports. She stamped them with Earth's official seal of non-involvement and sent them to the Galactic Neutrality Council. Then she made tea and watched the stars. That was the job. The observation post sat at the edge of the Sol system's neutral boundary, small enough that most warships ignored it the way a charging animal ignores a fence post. It had 4 dozen crew, 1 docking ring, and a diplomatic annex that currently housed exactly 1 resident ambassador Wren of the Selhari Coalition, who was too old to travel safely and too important to leave unprotected. Wren was sitting across from Dara in the small meal room when the Volkai warship appeared on the long-range display. Not an unusual event. Volkai ships tested the neutral boundary regularly, the way a dog tests an electric fence, not because they expected to get through, but to remind everyone that they were thinking about it. Dara set down her cup and pulled up the contact log with one hand while reaching for the comms panel with the other. Standard protocol. She had done it hundreds of times. What was not standard was the ship itself. Not a scout, not a patrol vessel. The energy signature matched a Volkai command cruiser, the kind that carried a general, not just a captain. Wren noticed her stillness. He was good at reading humans. After 7 years sharing a small station with them, he had learned all the small tells, the way Dara's shoulders pulled back slightly when something was wrong, the way she stopped blinking at a normal rate. "Trouble?" he asked. His voice was low and unhurried, the way old people speak when they have already survived enough trouble to know that panic changes nothing. "Possibly," she said. Station Commander Piotr Walczak arrived in the operations room 30 seconds later, already in full uniform. Whatever else Piotr was, and Dara had many opinions about what else Piotr was, he was fast when something required a response. The Volkai ship hailed them first. The commander on the screen was a large figure by any standard, General Vroth. Dara had seen his name in reports but never his face. He had the particular quality of a being who had won a great many arguments by being louder and larger than the other party, and who had come to believe that this made him correct. He spoke in Galactic Common, which all parties were required to use under the Accords. His translator unit gave his words a flat, clean sound that did not quite hide what was underneath them. Station 14. You are in possession of Selhari fleet movement data from the past 72 hours. Transmit it to this vessel. Piotr responded without hesitation, which Dara appreciated. General, this station operates under the Galactic Neutrality Accords, Article 7, Section 3. We collect observation data for the Council. We do not transmit operational intelligence to any party in the conflict. You know this. Vroth's expression did not change. What I know, he said, is that your species has spent 11 years hiding behind a piece of paper written by civilizations older and braver than your own. I am giving you an opportunity to be useful. With respect, General, the Accords are not hiding. They are law. They are convenience, Vroth said, and convenience lasts only as long as it is allowed to. He cut the channel. The cruiser sat there for another 4 minutes, then turned and moved back toward the Volkai side of the neutral zone without another word. Dara watched it go on the sensor display. Piotr filed the incident with the Council and moved on to other business. That was Piotr's particular skill, moving on. Dara stayed in the observation room. Wren found her there an hour later. He did not say anything immediately. He stood beside her and looked at the same patch of dark space where the cruiser had been. "He means it," Ren said finally. "Vroth is not the kind of commander who makes empty gestures. When he comes back, it will not be to talk." "The Accords will hold," Dara said. She said it the way people say things they are trying to keep true by repeating them. Ren looked at her. His eyes were large and pale, Selhari biology designed for lower light environments, and they had a way of seeing more than most species were comfortable with. "The Accords are words," he said gently, "and Vroth has been burning words for 11 years. What has stopped him before now is strength, not paper." He paused. "Do you understand what I am saying to you, Dara?" She understood. She did not want to. "Earth is neutral," she said. "Yes," Ren said, "you are." He picked up her empty cup from the console beside her, looked at it and set it back down. "I hope that is enough." He left her alone with the sensors and the dark and the slowly turning stars. She stayed there until her shift ended. She filed no additional report. There was nothing to file. A ship had come, said something unpleasant and left. The Accords had held. She told herself that meant something. The Ardent March was not a beautiful ship. It had been patched in 17 different places with 3 different grades of hull sealant, and its engine signature sounded like something being shaken in a metal bucket. It had made the resupply run between Earth's frontier posts 41 times in 6 years, and its captain, Sulo Makinen, knew every creak and complaint it made by name. Dara processed the transit clearance in under 4 minutes. Clean manifest, food, medicine, construction material, and 16 civilian crew. She flagged it as routine and moved on to the next item in her queue. She was in the middle of a data reconciliation when Yusuf Brennan knocked on her door frame. He was 26, 3 years into his first posting, and still wore the expression of someone who believed that bureaucratic problems had bureaucratic solutions if you just found the right form. "The Ardent March is asking about an escort," he said. "They picked something up on their sensors." Dara pulled up the display. Vroth's cruiser was back. This time it had brought 2 escort ships with it. She sat very still for a moment. "Get Commander Walczak," she said. Pieter arrived, reviewed the situation, and immediately opened a channel to the Volkai formation. Vroth was not on the line this time, a younger officer, sharp-faced and impatient, who gave his name as Sub-Commander Drell. Drell announced that the Ardent March was suspected of carrying Selhari intelligence agents posing as civilian crew. He demanded the station authorize a boarding and search under emergency accord provisions. Pieter pulled up the emergency provisions while Dara pulled up the Ardent March manifest again. She cross-referenced every crew name against 3 different databases in the time it took Pieter to find the relevant clause. 16 people. Merchant licenses, family records, medical histories, transit logs going back years. Not one of them had any connection to the Selhari military. Pieter said so clearly and cited the article number. Drell said the Volkai Dominion disputed Earth's assessment and would conduct its own verification. Pieter said the Accords did not permit that. Drell ended the channel. On the sensor display, the 3 Volkai ships began moving toward the Ardent March. Sulo Makinen's voice came over the comms, steady but tight. "Station 14, we have 3 warships closing on our position, requesting instructions." Pieter put the channel on mute. He looked at Dara. She looked at him. In that silence she understood exactly what he was going to say because she already knew what the rulebook said, and the rulebook was all Pieter had ever had. "We document this," he said. "We file immediately with the Council." "Pieter, Earth does not intervene. That is not ambiguous." She took the channel off mute. She told Sulo to stay calm and not to resist a boarding. She told him Earth was filing a formal protest. She told him the Accords would protect him. She hated every word of it. The Volkai boarded the Ardent March in less than 12 minutes. Dara watched on sensors while Yusuf stood beside her without speaking. The boarding team moved through the ship quickly. Whatever they were actually looking for, if they were looking for anything at all, they did not find it. Because there was nothing to find. What they did find, apparently, was a reason to be angry about that. The comms from the Ardent March went static for 18 minutes. When Sulo came back on the line, his voice had a different quality to it, something careful in it, the kind of careful that happens after pain. The Volkai ships detached and moved back toward their side of the boundary. They took 2 of the crew with them. A man named Declan Ferris, 43, electrical systems engineer from Cork. A woman named Priya Nair, 31, cargo logistics specialist from Kochi. Taken for, as Drell put it in the brief official message that followed, further questioning in relation to the ongoing investigation. Pieter filed the protest within the hour. The language was firm and specific, and cited 11 separate Accord articles. Yusuf did not say anything for a long time after the Volkai ships disappeared from the display. Then he said, "They knew the ship was clean." "Yes," Dara said. "So they took 2 people anyway, just to what? Show us they could." She did not answer, because the answer was obvious, and saying it out loud would not help either of them. Ambassador Wren came to the operations room that evening. He stood at the edge of the doorway and looked at the now empty sensor display showing the Ardent March moving slowly away toward its destination, 2 people short. "I am sorry," he said. It was a simple thing to say. He said it like he meant it, which he did. "The council will respond," Dara said. Wren looked at her. He did not say what he was thinking. He was too kind for that. But she saw it anyway. That tired, gentle, heartbroken patience in those pale eyes. The look of someone who has seen this exact thing happen before, who knows exactly how the council will respond, who knows exactly how much that response will matter. She filed her documentation. She used precise language. She cited the correct articles. She did not sleep well. Yusuf put Declan and Priya's names on a piece of paper and taped it to the wall beside his console. Dara noticed it in the morning and said nothing. It seemed like the least wrong thing anyone had done all day. The official report used the phrase, "complications during questioning." Dara read it 3 times. She read it the first time quickly, the way you read something you hope you misunderstood. The second time slowly, looking for a different meaning. The third time she just sat there with the words on the screen in front of her, because there was no other meaning. Declan Ferris and Priya Nair were dead. The Volkai Dominion expressed regret for the outcome and considered the matter closed. The Galactic Neutrality Council's formal response arrived 4 days later. It used the words grave concern twice and deeply troubling once. It demanded an explanation. It gave the Volkai 30 standard days to respond. Yusuf took the piece of paper with the 2 names on it off the wall. He folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. He did not put up a new piece of paper. He did not say anything. He just worked, and the space on the wall where the paper had been was somehow louder than anything else in the room. Dara was recalled to Earth to testify before the council. She spent 12 days on a transport ship organizing her thoughts, then stood in a curved room full of representatives from 47 species and told them exactly what she had seen. She used numbers. She used timestamps. She used Accord article references. She did not raise her voice. Counselor Finn Akaffer, who led Earth's delegation, thanked her afterward in the hallway and told her she had done excellent work. He shook her hand. He smelled faintly of the expensive kind of synthetic coffee that only council-level officials could afford. "What happens now?" she asked him. He explained the process. There would be a review period, a formal response demand, a diplomatic channel through the Volkai's neutral state intermediaries. These things took time, but the Accords were the Accords, and the Accords had teeth. Dara thought about Declan Ferris, 43, from Cork. She thought about Priya Nair, 31, from Kochi. She thought about how much time they had. She flew back to the station. General Adiz, Enwasu found her in transit. Not in person, over a secure military channel that Dara had not known she had clearance to receive. Enwasu was a compact woman with a voice that took up more space than the rest of her, and she had the focused quality of someone who had spent decades preparing for something everyone else insisted would never happen. "I read your testimony," Enwasu said. "Good work." "Thank you, General." "Tell me something that was not in the testimony." Dara thought about that. Vroth is not probing anymore. He is not testing the boundary. He is ignoring it. There is a difference. A pause. "Yes, there is," Enwasu said. "How long before he pushes into the populated neutral zone corridors?" "Based on the movement patterns I have been tracking, 3 months, maybe less." Another pause, longer this time. "I want your observation data, not the Council's summaries. The raw data, all of it, everything you have logged in the past 2 years." Dara sent it. She never asked Enwasu what she was using it for. She had a reasonable idea. Vroth gave a public broadcast 6 weeks later. It was addressed to the galaxy generally, which was unusual. Volkai commanders did not typically make speeches for general consumption. They made demands. This was something different, something almost leisurely, which was worse. He called Earth a species of frightened children. He said Earth's neutrality was not a moral position but a survival strategy, and a cowardly one. He said that a civilization that watched atrocities from a safe distance and filed reports about them had already made its choice, and that choice was simply not to be counted. He said this in Galactic Common, so there would be no misunderstanding. Dara was on a transport back to the station when the broadcast played. She watched the faces of the other passengers. A Selhari family traveling together, the children pressed against the viewport. 2 Drenathi traders playing a card game who stopped mid-hand to listen. A young human engineer who had been sleeping for the first 3 hours of the trip and woke up when someone near him turned up the volume. The engineer listened to Vroth's words with the particular expression of a person who is hearing something they have always known said out loud for the first time. Then Meridian Station went dark. It did not explode. It did not send a distress call that cut off dramatically. It simply stopped transmitting in the middle of a routine supply inventory report, the way a person stops talking mid-sentence when something hits them. The last signal received was partial: inventory count, crate reference numbers, and then beneath it, almost as an afterthought, a ship's signature that had no business being anywhere near a civilian colony. Vorkai Heavy Assault Class. Meridian Station held 4,216 people. Miners, families, teachers, doctors, children. It had been in operation for 19 years. It sat within the neutral zone, explicitly protected under Accord Article 2, which was the oldest and clearest article in the entire document. Dara was still reading the alert when General Enwasu's voice came through on the secure channel. Not just to Dara this time, to every Earth defense unit in the region. She did not sound angry. She did not sound frightened. She sounded like someone who had been waiting a long time for something and had now finally been given permission to respond to it. "Authorization confirmed," Enwasu said. "All units prepare to mobilize. This is not a drill and it is not a negotiation. Move." Dara looked at the dark space on her screen, where Meridian's signal had been. She pulled up the fastest route back to the station and started moving. Earth's official statement was 47 words long. Other governments, when they entered wars, issued declarations, speeches, historical documents meant to be quoted for generations. Earth's statement was filed with the Galactic Neutrality Council at 600 Standard Time, in plain Galactic Common, with no ceremony and no additional comment. It stated that the Volkai Dominion had attacked a civilian population under explicit Accord protection. that Earth recognized this as a violation requiring enforcement response under Article 2, and that Earth Defense Forces were mobilizing accordingly. 47 words. The galaxy read it 4 times and still was not entirely sure what had just happened. Nwasu's flagship, the Resolute Accord, was not the largest ship in the human fleet. It was, however, the most precisely maintained vessel Dara had ever stood on. Everything on it had a place, everything was in that place, and the crew moved with the kind of quiet competence that comes from years of drilling for a moment everyone publicly agreed would never arrive. Dara had been given a liaison post on the command deck. She was not military and everyone knew it, but Nwasu had looked at her record 11 years of raw observation data, direct contact with Selhari diplomats, more documented Volcae encounters than any other active Earth officer, and decided she was useful. "You will tell me what they are going to do before they do it," Nwasu told her. "You have been watching Vroth for years. That knowledge is a weapon. Use it." Dara looked at the battle display. 17 Earthships forming up in precise formation. Not 1,700, 17. The Volcae fielded fleets of hundreds. "General," she said carefully, "they outnumber us by." "I know the numbers," Nwasu said. "So do they. That is why they have never bothered to learn our tactics." The first contact was not a battle, it was a seizure. A Volcae supply convoy, 8 freighters, and 2 escorts was operating inside the neutral corridor, technically prohibited under Accord Article 9, but routinely ignored because no one had ever stopped them before. Nwasu moved 4 Earthships into intercept position and broadcast a boarding notice in Galactic Common. The convoy's escort commander opened a channel and laughed. Not a cruel laugh, a genuinely surprised one. The kind of laugh a person makes when a small animal tries to block a road. The laugh stopped when the boarding teams made contact with the escort ships. Human boarding tactics were not what the Volcae had seen from other species. Other species boarded ships the way you force a door with maximum pressure at the entry point, a show of strength, a demand for immediate submission. Humans boarded ships the way a surgeon operates. They hit the communications array first, quietly, cutting the escort off from calling for support. Then the engine control systems not destroyed, just locked, so the ship was not going anywhere. Then and only then did they breach the airlock, and when they did, the boarding team was small, it was fast, and it came with lawyers. Not metaphorical lawyers. Actual legal officers, in addition to the security team, carrying formal Accord seizure documentation, ready to serve it on the spot. The Volcae escort commander found herself being handed a legal notice before she had finished processing the fact that she had been boarded. The document cited the specific Accord articles being violated, listed the rights of the crew under Accord law, and explained in clear language that the ships and cargo were being held as evidence in an enforcement proceeding. She stared at it for a long time. "You are arresting me," she said. "Detaining," the Earth legal officer said politely. "There is a procedural difference. Would you like it explained?" The convoy was secured in 40 minutes. No casualties, not on either side. Word reached Vroth within the hour. Dara watched the Volcae fleet movement data shift on the display. 3 heavy cruisers breaking from formation and moving toward the neutral corridor. Fast, angry. "He is coming personally," she told Nwasu. "Good," Nwasu said. "He has been making noise for 11 years. It is time to have a real conversation." What Vroth expected, based on every experience he had ever had with smaller and weaker opponents, was one of 2 things: either the humans would scatter when they saw the size of his ships, or they would do something desperate and symbolic that he could punish them for. Earth ships did neither. They held their formation and waited. They did not respond to his opening broadcast demanding they release the convoy. They did not respond to his second broadcast calling them cowards. They did not respond to his third broadcast, which contained language that the translation unit rendered diplomatically, but which was clearly not diplomatic. When Enwasu finally opened a channel, it was brief. "General Vrath, I want you to look at your convoy escorts." Vrath looked. The ships were intact. His crews were unharmed. The cargo was intact. Even the ship's logs had not been wiped. "We did not destroy them," Enwasu said. "We are not here to destroy things. We are here to enforce the law. Your convoy violated Article 9. The seizure is legal, documented, and already filed with the Council. If you fire on us, you will be adding an attack on enforcement officers to an existing list of violations that already includes the murder of 4,000 civilians." A pause. "I would think carefully about that." Vrath stared at her from his bridge display. His ships had stopped moving. He had faced enemies who wanted to destroy him. He had faced enemies who wanted his territory, his resources, his political position. He knew how to fight all of those. He had never faced an enemy who wanted to put him on trial. The distance between the fleets held, thin and tense, like a thread pulled tight between two hands. Vrath fired first. Of course he did. He was a general who had spent 30 years winning by being the most dangerous thing in the room, and nothing in those 30 years had taught him that talking was ever the better option once weapons were within range. He gave no warning. He gave no final demand. He simply decided the conversation was over and opened fire on the nearest Earthship. The nearest Earthship moved. This was the first surprise. Volkai targeting systems were calibrated against the way most species maneuvered under fire, which was to say, in the direction away from the attack. Earthships moved across it. Small adjustments, precise angles, using the shot's own trajectory as a kind of geometry problem to solve in real time. The blast clipped the hull and burned away a section of outer plating. The ship kept moving. Enwasu's response was immediate, and nothing like what Vrath anticipated. She did not return fire at his flagship. She sent 2 ships wide around his formation's left edge, moving toward the rear escorts not to destroy them, but to cut them off from the main fleet. A 3rd ship deployed what looked like a cloud of small drones that spread outward in a wide net. Vrath ordered his ships to shoot them down, which they did, which was exactly what Enwasu had wanted them to do, because every shot spent on a drone was a targeting system occupied and a weapons cycle running hot. Vrath watched his tactical display and felt, for the first time in recent memory, that he was slightly behind. The humans had been watching this war for 11 years, not participating in it, not advising on it, watching it, logging every engagement, studying every commander's patterns. They knew how Volkai ships turned, how Volkai captains prioritized targets, how Volkai formations responded to flanking pressure. They had built an entire library of someone else's war and quietly memorized it. And Vrath had spent 11 years not studying anything about humans, because there had never seemed to be a reason to. One of his cruisers took a precise strike to its engine block, not the engine itself, but the power coupling that fed the primary drive. The ship did not explode. It did not even lose full power. It just slowed down, became heavy and uncertain in its movements, like a fighter with one leg numbed. A second strike took out its long-range comms array. Now it was slow and deaf. Still alive, still armed, but no longer fully in the battle. Vrath ordered his reserve formation to move on Yusuf's communication hub, still operating back at the observation station, still coordinating civilian evacuation traffic through the neutral zone. If he could not beat Earth's fleet cleanly, he could at least force them to split their attention. Dara had already flagged the reserve movement 20 minutes before Vrath gave the order. Yusuf had been working continuously for 11 hours. He had dark circles under his eyes and had eaten nothing but protein paste from a supply kit, but his mind was running clean and fast. He rerouted 18 civilian transports, Selhari, Drenathi, and 2 Volkai civilian ships whose captains had privately told him, They wanted nothing to do with what their military was doing through a secondary corridor. He had mapped out 3 hours earlier in anticipation of exactly this problem. The reserve formation arrived at the expected intercept point and found empty space. What they found instead was a Selhari patrol fleet. Not attacking, simply there occupying the same corridor on what they described as a routine navigation exercise. The Selhari fleet commander offered a cheerful greeting over open comms and noted that the corridor was quite crowded, and perhaps everyone should be careful about where they were pointing their weapons. Ambassador Wren was the one who had made that call. He had spent the last several hours on a secure channel with Selhari High Command, not asking for military support, because Earth had not asked for military support. He had simply described in careful factual terms what Earth was doing, why they were doing it, and where the neutral corridor evacuation routes were. The Selhari had made their own decisions from there. Vroth's reserve had nowhere useful to go. Back in the main engagement, his flagship took a strike to the port weapons array. Again, not destroyed, disabled. The humans were doing something methodical and deeply aggravating, picking apart his ship's capacity piece by piece, like someone removing tiles from a mosaic. His ship was still there. He was still alive. He just had progressively fewer ways to do anything about it. He launched his emergency attack drones, 200 small automated units that would swarm a target and overwhelm point defense systems through sheer numbers. This had ended several battles for him. Earth's drone countermeasure deployed in response. Not a weapon, a signal, a specific frequency that Earth's engineers had calculated from observing Volkai drone behavior over 11 years of watching them used in actual combat. The drones did not explode. They stopped. They hung in space, confused, their targeting systems asking a question that the signal prevented them from answering. Vroth's weapons officer told him the drones were unresponsive. His flag captain told him the portside array was down. His communications officer told him 3 of his escort ships were boxed in by their own debris field, because the humans had destroyed neither the ships nor the debris, but had maneuvered in a way that made the debris into a wall. Then the Selhari main fleet arrived from the opposite direction, not the patrol element, the fleet. They had apparently decided on their own that the timing was good. Vroth's flagship took one more strike, clean and final, to its primary drive. The ship did not go dark. Life support stayed on. His crew was unharmed. But the Resolute Accord was already moving into close position, and on the comms channel, Nwasu's voice was calm and completely certain. "General, it is over. Your crew is unharmed and will remain so. You have the right to formal proceedings under Article 14 of the Galactic Neutrality Accords. You have the right to legal representation. You have the right to respond to the charges against you before a council tribunal." A brief pause. "A boarding team is on its way. Please do not make this harder than it needs to be." Vroth sat in his command chair and looked at his tactical display. He had expected many possible endings to this engagement. He had not expected to be arrested. He did not resist, not because he was afraid of what resistance would cost him. He was afraid, but of something he had never faced before. Not of pain, not of defeat, not of death. Of a room, a proceeding, a list of names read aloud in front of the entire galaxy. 4,216 of them. 6 months after the battle, Dara sat in the Galactic Neutrality Council chamber and answered questions from 47 different representatives, and the thing that struck her most was how quiet the room was. The last time she had testified here, the room had felt like a formality, people going through steps. She had felt it in the way they listened politely, with the particular attention of people who have already decided what they are going to do and are simply waiting for the presentation to end. This time they leaned forward. A Drenathi council member, tall and copper-colored with 3 separate voice boxes that let her speak in harmonics, asked Dara the question directly. Why did Earth act? Dara had prepared a careful answer. She had thought about it on the long transport ride, written several versions of it, crossed them all out. What she said in the end was simpler than any of them. Because 4,000 people were murdered in a place they were promised was safe. If we watched that happen and filed a report about it, we were not neutral. We were just present at a crime and doing nothing. She paused. Earth decided those were not the same thing anymore. The room stayed quiet for a moment after she finished. Not the quiet of discomfort, the quiet of people absorbing something. The ceasefire negotiations were already underway by then. The war had not ended. Wars have too much inertia to stop cleanly, but Vroth's faction within the Volkai Dominion had collapsed the moment his flagship was boarded. The Volkai were not a unified people any more than humans were, and a significant portion of their political structure had, very quietly and very quickly, decided that Vroth had made poor decisions, and that they had always had reservations about his methods. Moderate voices that had been silent for 11 years found that they had things to say now that the loudest voice in the room was in a holding facility. The Selhari were cautious about the ceasefire. They had been hurt too long to trust quickly, but they were talking, which they had not been doing before. The council voted on the enforcement motion 14 days after Dara's testimony. The vote was not close. It gave the Galactic Neutrality Accord's actual binding enforcement authority for the first time in the document's 300-year history. Not advisory, not conditional, actual authority with the ability to deploy enforcement assets and bring proceedings against any party, regardless of their size or political standing. The motion also named Earth as the lead enforcement body. Councillor Akafer, sitting 3 seats to Dara's left during the announcement, began quietly drafting a response declining the appointment. He was still drafting it when General Nwasu, attending remotely from the fleet staging area, accepted on Earth's behalf. She cited Article 2, which both of them knew by heart at this point, and noted that Earth had already demonstrated a working model for enforcement operations and saw no reason to stop. Akafer put his draft away. He was a careful man and he knew when a decision had been made. Dara found Ambassador Wren on the observation station when she returned. He was in his usual spot in the small mealroom, which was also her usual spot in the small mealroom, and they had tea together the way they had been doing for years. He was thinner than he had been. The months had been hard on him in ways he did not complain about, but there was something different in him too, a loosening. The way a person looks when they have been holding their breath for a very long time and have finally, cautiously, let it out. The Selhari Council sent me a message, he said. They are considering a diplomatic normalization process, not peace, not yet, but conversations. He looked at his cup. 11 years ago I would have called that impossible. What changed? Dara asked, though she mostly knew. Someone proved the law still existed, Wren said simply. That is more powerful than most people understand. When a law is written but never enforced, it teaches everyone that laws are decoration. But when someone enforces it even once, even at cost, it teaches something different. He looked at her. It teaches that the line is real. Yusuf came in with his own cup and sat down without being asked, which was the kind of thing that happened naturally now. He had been working 18-hour days since the battle, coordinating the civilian transport documentation and building the legal framework for the new enforcement body from scratch. He looked exhausted in the permanent way that only resolves with actual rest, which he was not getting. The Volkai civilian captains who helped us with the evacuation routes, he said, not quite as a question. Their government is calling them traitors. I know, Dara said. We should do something about that. I know, she said again. It was now on the list. The list had grown considerably. Wren told her, as she was preparing to leave for her next briefing, that the Selhari had a word for what humans had done, not the battle, not the political result, but the specific quality of it, the particular shape of the choice. He said there was no clean translation, but the nearest meaning was something like, those who draw the line and then stand on it. She thought about that on the walk back to the operations room. She thought about the years of watching, the years of reports and filed protests and careful neutrality. She thought about Declan Ferris and Priya Nair. About 4,216 people who had trusted that the line was real. She thought about the fact that it had taken their deaths to make it real. Back at her station, the long-range sensors had already flagged something new, a conflict building in a distant sector. Early stages, the kind of thing that looked manageable until it suddenly did not. The system tagged it automatically, the way it tagged everything, and moved it into the queue. Dara pulled up the file. She opened a channel to Nwasu. She started writing a report. Earth had not wanted this job, but someone had to do it, and it turned out the species everyone had ignored for 11 years had spent that time paying very close attention.